Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today you are checking out a Stamina Necromancer solo PVE build for the Elsweyr chapter. And what we've got here is something that's really fun to play with a bit of an RP flavor going on. I've chosen some sets that go with kind of a Death Knight theme, but those sets also make for a very strong solo build. So let's jump right into it. We'll check out the stats, the gear, the skills, champion points, and more coming up next. Alright guys, welcome to beautiful Tempest Island, where your vacation has been ruined by constant rain and snakes. Actually, this kind of reminds me of like the old dolmen farming days. Do you guys remember that? When people just used to sit on a cliff with their trigger button taped down with a fire staff. What are you guys even aiming at? Sorry, stats. Stats on the build. A couple disclaimers as usual. I'm not completely min-maxed. I'm missing a few things here, a few traits. I don't have Undaunted maxed out quite yet either. And also, this is a solo build, so it will look a bit different. This is not a pure DPS build, so just keep that in mind as I'm going over the stats and the gear. With the solo build, you always have to think about, can you tank? Can you keep yourself alive, and can you do damage at the same time? So there's going to definitely be a balance here. $10k max magicka, about 20k maximum health, 30k max stamina, 1800 stamina recovery, 800 magicka recovery, about 3500 weapon damage that will go up to about 4k with our berserker glyph, and then about 40% weapon critical. For our resistances here, in heavy armor, basically what we're doing is 5 heavy, 2 medium. We're sitting at about 24,000 spell and physical resistance. Decided to go with the Warrior Mundus. That's just going to keep our weapon damage high, even in heavy armor. Lavafoot, Soup, and Saltress, I decided to use this because I had plenty of health. Being a Necromancer, we get passive health bonus. Using a couple of the sets here, I have a lot of health from my armor sets and my glyphs. So I wanted more stamina recovery on the heavy armor setup. That's why I like this. But another option would definitely be Dubious Cameron Throne. You'll get kind of an even split between max stamina and health, with just a little bit less stamina recovery. I'm a stage 2 vampire. That's for the extra stamina and magicka recovery. Very good on a solo build, but fire equals bad on this character, so just watch out for that. You take 15% more damage from fire. For our potion, we are using the Essence of Weapon Crit. That's giving us that extra 10% weapon crit there. It also gives us a nice little mini heal, almost a burst heal when we pop a potion, so that is very helpful. You can also use just the plain stamina potions if you're going through if you're doing dungeon trash pulls and things like that, and you don't want to waste those. That's definitely fine. And then for our race, went with the Red Guard here from my previous build. Now, I do like it for a few things. The cost reduction, definitely nice on our weapon skills. 2,000 max stamina, definitely awesome. And this Adrenaline Rush passive is still amazing, about 1,000 stamina back every 5 seconds. This makes it very easy to sustain in a heavy armor setup, which is what I'm running here on the Death Knight build. Now, I would also recommend Orc for the extra weapon damage. That would be amazing on this build, plus the extra health and stamina. It's going to be great. Also Imperial, you get the 2,000 health and stamina is going to be really nice, plus cost reduction for being an Imperial. So Imperial, Orc, Red Guard, probably my top 3 for this particular setup. So jumping into our gear sets next, let's go ahead and check those out. Starting with our first 5-piece set, I have chosen Night Mother's Gaze set for our Death Knight build. This just gives a decent amount of weapon critical, weapon damage, and then for the 5-piece bonus here, when you deal critical damage, you apply that Major Fracture debuff, reduces physical resistance by 50 to 80. So the Necromancer does get an ability for this, but it costs magicka. That's the Boneyard AoE debuff. So you can get this from your skills, but I'm also running actually 3 other magicka skills, and I just didn't find that Boneyard skill sustainable. So I liked getting this debuff from my set It's super easy to proc this with our bow, with caltrops, with anything. This will always be up. So getting that major fracture debuff easily. It's going to increase our overall damage output by quite a bit. This is a crafted set, pretty easy to craft, or you can even pick this up sometimes in guild traders. So what I've decided to use here is weapons and jewelry. I've got the maul on my front bar. I went with Nirnhone there just for a little bit extra weapon damage. Back bar, I'm using the bow infused. That's to help our Berserker enchant go up to about 450 weapon damage there. And then I am using the Absorb Stamina enchantment here on the front bar. You can use poisons here if you want for a little bit extra damage. That's probably fine. So that's going to cover 2 pieces. And then, like I said, you can run this on the jewelry. And you just want robust pieces here with weapon damage enchants. I also have a medium waist in Divines with a stamina enchantment. That's how I'm using that first 5-piece set. Second 5-piece set is kind of something that has an RP flavor, I think, that goes good with the Death Knight concept. Went with the Leeching Plate set, which I just had kind of sitting around in my bank for a long time. This actually got buffed in the Elsweyr chapter. It gives you a lot of max health, some healing taken, which is okay for a solo set. But what makes it nice, especially in dungeons, even vet dungeons and clearing through trash, is it lets you summon this cloud of poison, basically. So you have a 20% chance to summon this cloud, and it deals 1500 poison damage and heals you for that damage every 1 second. So it's basically a 1500 heal every 1 second passively while you're taking damage. So I just like this set. I think it fits the theme of the build, and it gives me a nice bit of heal over time, helping me stay alive quite easily on this build. You can tank for days with this set going. This is a heavy armor set, which means we are running 5 pieces of heavy and 2 medium on this build. Now, if you wanted to switch over to medium, you could. You could get the leeching weapons if you want, but that's going to be quite a bit of farming considering this is from Imperial City Prison. So I definitely recommend just picking up 5 body pieces there, or perhaps 1 or 2 pieces of jewelry to get the 5 pieces. You can also buy key shards from any guild trader and turn those in at the trophy vault to get gear items that way. Now, if you want something that does a little bit more damage, something that I would recommend would be swapping Leeching for Hunding's Rage. Hunding's Rage is going to give you more stamina, more weapon damage, more weapon critical, so you can even run heavy Hunding's Rage in place of this, be just as tanky, and get more stamina and weapon damage. You will not have as much health, though, so you might want to switch over to Dubious Cameron Throne to make up that difference for health. But that would be another option I would recommend for your body there, either Leeching, if you like the Death Knight flavor, or you can swap in Hunding's Rage. Last but not least, going along with our theme here, I went with a skeleton for my monster set. That's the Pirate Skeleton set, of course. This recently went on sale on the Golden Vendor, so if you pick that up, this build actually makes it work quite well. You get the extra physical and spell resistance, which is always good for soloing. Then when we take damage, just like our Leeching set, we get the chance to proc this buff. It is Major Protection for 12 seconds. That gives us 30% damage reduction, while also giving us Minor Defile, so that's a 15% reduction in healing. You really don't feel the Minor Defile at all, I have to say. We have several 3 or 4 heal over times running on this build, so you really are not going to feel it. But you will notice the Major Protection, especially in a boss fight. That extra 30% damage reduction is huge. So I'm using 1 heavy here and 1 medium. Try to get Divines as well as you can on this build. That'll give you more weapon damage from your Mundus Stone. Traits like Infused on the big pieces would be fine as well. Even a couple of Well-Fitted on the smaller pieces would be just fine. I do have a mixture of stamina and health enchants there, just to kind of round out my stats. You want to be above 20k health, basically, on a solo build, just to make sure you can sustain those really heavy hits from bosses, especially vet dungeons, if that's what you want to try. Jumping over to our skills now on our front bar. This is our 2-hand bar. We've got Reverse Slice. This is a nice bit of AoE execute damage. Gives you that splash damage, so really nice. It's great for clearing trash packs, great for finishing off bosses. Next up, we've got Mortal Coil. It's basically a heal over time with stamina restore, so this is really great on the Stamina Necromancer. That 2800 stamina over 12 seconds. This ends up being something like 450 additional stamina recovery that you don't see on your stat sheet. So it is very nice. You also get a passive increase to healing done. Just a great all-around skill to have. You do need a corpse active. We'll talk about how you get 2 free corpses no matter what, even in a single target boss fight on this build. Next up, Detonating Siphon. This is another tether skill. You need a corpse to cast this. And this is just a nasty, nasty disease dot. 24,000 unbuffed tooltip here over 12 seconds is massive. It is AoE, and then you also get the explosion effect at the end here after those 12 seconds. You also get a passive 3% increased damage done. So this just makes sense to have on the front bar. It can be a little bit tricky to pull off. You do need the corpses, like I said, and you can run other things here if you want. Trap Beast would be an option, for example, in this slot. Now next up, I've got Ruinous Scythe, and this is our AoE damage and heal. The tooltip is decent considering this is AoE. It does give us a chance to proc off balance, which when you do have off balance on an enemy, you can heavy attack them for a big burst of stamina back, which is another great way to sustain on a heavy armor setup. But you also get 3,000 health for the first enemy and 1,000 for each additional enemy. So I will drop this a lot on trash packs when I need to get my health up. It's just a great healing and survivability skill. Next up, we've got Rally. This gives us major brutality. That's 20% weapon damage. Great buff. We've got 1,000 health every 2 seconds. And then we got that nice Rally burst heal when we need it. So we do have a burst heal on the build, which is helpful. You do not want to use the burst immediately because the longer you have this buff active, the bigger the heal will be. But if you keep it active for at least like 15 seconds, the heal will be pretty substantial. So that's great for when you get into trouble. And then lastly on our front bar, we've got Flawless Dawnbreaker as the ultimate. This is really just for passive weapon damage. I am not going to be casting this unless the fight is almost over. If it's going to be over in 2 seconds, then I might use it. But we're getting 5% weapon damage while having this slotted on our front bar. And we also have additional 3% from our Fighters Guild passive. So 8% weapon damage is nice for this skill. But our back bar ultimate is what we're going to be saving up for the majority of the time. Speaking of that back bar, we have got our bow back bar with poison injection. Great single target damage. You'll want to save this for the big bosses and bigger mobs in trash packs. Does execute damage the lower health the enemy is. Endless Hail is going to be our AoE damage over time, and really this does tons of damage, and it helps us proc our Berserker enchant, giving us that extra 450 weapon damage. Every 5 seconds, you'll have that up all the time. Razor Caltrops is another AoE damage over time, 12-second duration. Does a very good physical damage, gives you a snare, plus a nice bit of burst damage on the initial hit. And then last up, we've got our 2 buffs. Beckoning Armor is going to be our Major Ward, Major Resolve buff. Gives us that 50 to 80 spell and physical resistance. And while we have that up, enemies that strike us with ranged attacks get pulled in. So this is our pull for those pesky little archers, those pesky mages out on the edge of a fight. They'll be pulled to you automatically every 3 seconds, so you don't have to worry about chasing down mobs to finish off a fight. They'll be pulled to you, so this is great. It does create a corpse when the effect ends, and so when you recast this to refresh it, you'll get that corpse show up on the ground, and that's one of those corpses that will let you cast either a Siphon or a Mortal Coil. My first cast is usually going to depend on the situation. If I'm taking tons of damage and I need some extra heal over time and sustain, I'm going to cast Coil with that first corpse. If not, I can do Detonating Siphon for even more AoE damage. But yes, definitely keep this up for the armor passively. And then Spirit Guardian is our other self buff. This also gives us a heal over time. The heal, though, is really... it's nothing. It's like the lowest heal over time on this build. Why we really use this is 10% damage reduction. Okay, 10% damage reduction, even on a heavy armor build, is a lot. This is a great defensive skill, and I just cast these two skills together in my buff rotation, armor, Spirit Guardian, drop my AoEs, and then I can bar swap to the front. For ultimate, we're using the obvious choice, I think, for Stamina Necro DPS. We're using the Colossus. Pestilent Colossus gives us increased damage every hit. So it gets you 3 hits. Each one is stronger than the first. You also get major vulnerability for 3 seconds. So something to keep in mind is you don't want to open with this ultimate. What you want to do is you want to make sure you have all your dots down. Make sure you have your AoE dots, caltrops, hail, poison injection. Then you can drop that, because that's going to increase the damage of everything else that's ticking away on your target. So keep that in mind. It is a little bit costly, $225 ultimate, but definitely well worth it for the amount of damage you can do. This thing is insane. So in terms of passives, you're going to want all of your class passives. These are actually really strong on the Necromancer. Death Knell is very good for executing. You get increased critical strike chance. Dismember, we get extra physical penetration, very good. Then Rapid Rot, this thing is awesome. 10% extra damage over time. And you saw how many damage over time effects we have. It's great on this build. So Death Gleaning, this is just a bit of sustain here. Disdain Harm is going to help a little bit with damage reduction from dot effects. Health Avarice gives you a small amount of healing received, 2%. That does add up, though. This is one of my favorite passives. Last Gasp gives us 1250 max health. Very helpful, especially when soloing. Like I mentioned earlier, you want your health around 20k. A little bit more would be actually great, and this passive definitely helps with that. Living Death, these are sort of our healing and survivability passives. While we are affected with negative effects, 8% healing done, that's very good. We do get increased crit chance with healing abilities, which is awesome. We do get some ultimate gen, 10 ultimate every 16 seconds when using a corpse. We'll definitely be getting that. And this is another amazing passive. Undead Confederate gives us 200 magicka and stamina recovery with our Mender active. I decided to go with Mender instead of the Archer on this particular build for the damage reduction. But I still wanted that sustain, so I definitely need that passive. You'll obviously want all of your two-handed passives, all of your bow passives. Since this is a heavy armor build, we don't want to grab agility. This is only for 5 or more pieces of medium armor. You can still get benefits from the rest of these, though. So dexterity gives us weapon critical. Windwalker gives us stam recovery and stam cost reduction, which is really important. Athletics gives us better sprint speed and roll dodge cost reduction. So pick those up. Even if you're running heavy armor, if you're running 1 or 2 pieces of medium, you can still benefit a lot from those guys. And then, of course, all our heavy armor passives on this setup. We've got extra physical and spell reduction. Health recovery, not such a big deal since we are a vampire. But you do get over 500 magicka and stamina from the Constitution passive. Juggernaut gives you max health, very good. Revitalize gives you good stamina and magicka sustain. Since we're using weapons, two-hand will get stamina sustain from a two-handed heavy attack, and that's definitely a way to help sustain in a longer fight. And then 8% increased healing, very good. If you are a vampire, make sure you pick up supernatural recovery. This is a big one for soloing, 10% on top of whatever else you have on both magicka and stamina recovery, which is great, since we have 3 magicka abilities on this build. Undeath, you only get this if you have stage 3 or higher, so I'm not using this currently. Fighters Guild, very important for our front bar, where we have Flawless Dawnbreaker. Slayer is going to give you that extra 3%, gives us 8% total. Banish the Wicked, 9 ultimate per kill. That's only on undead, Daedra, or werewolves, though. Extra damage on your Dawnbreaker if you choose to use it on the front bar. Undaunted, definitely pick these up. As soon as you get that maxed out, that'll give you a lot more stats to work with. Assault and Support, not really using anything here. Always pick up your racial passives. And extremely important when soloing, you want to grab Medicinal Use, which increases those potion effects 30% longer. Last but not least, let's check out those champion points. This is what I would recommend for 810 So in our green tree, 37 Warlord, 27 Sprinter, 32 Tenacity, 32 Arcanist, 64 Mooncalf, 37 into Shadow Ward, and 40 into Tumbling. In the blue tree, we've got 23 into Blessed, 21 Physical Weapon Expert, 61 Master at Arms, 56 into Thaumaturge, 23 Precise Strikes, 43 into Piercing and Mighty. In the red tree, we've got 72 Ironclad, 3 into Spell Shield, just a little bit left over there, 64 into Hardy and Elemental Defender, 44 Thick-Skinned, and 23 into Quick Recovery. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for this solo PVE Stamina Necro build. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to crush that like button for me and leave some comments below. It absolutely helps out the channel, helps this video get noticed and sent around to more people on YouTube, so I always appreciate you guys doing that. Now, I actually have another solo build, heavily requested build that I'm working on. Hopefully that'll come out next. But definitely let me know in the comments what else you guys would like to see from the channel, whether it's build videos, guides, discussions. I definitely want to get your input, so let me know. And until then, I will see you guys around in the next video. Thanks.